So many organizations work night and day to acquire new customers, to recruit new employees. But when it comes to thinking about keeping them retained over the long term, it doesn't seem like that's as big of a priority. And that can be the death knell for any organization.
People want experiences, not digital customer experiences, or they want like experiences, not technology or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. They just want like, how do you take problems away from me, or how do you make my life easier?
Fastest way to grow and scale your business is to keep your customers. Customers need to feel like they're not a number.
We have to know who we're working with, who we're not working with. And what we want to get to is to get the people that we are the right fit for. We should be taking problems away, not adding problems.
In all of this discussion about AI and about technology and about speed, we're leaving out the conversation about how do the humans we interact with, whether those are our customers or our employees. So don't forget the human while you're chasing the technological.
Joey Coleman is a renowned speaker, author, and expert in employee and customer experience. With a background that includes working in the White House and performing on global stages, Joey brings a wealth of insight and creativity. He's the author of 2 Wall Street Journal bestsellers, Never Lose a Customer Again and Never Lose an Employee Again, offering actionable strategies to build loyalty. Having delivered thousands of speeches across all 7 continents, Joey also coaches aspiring speakers to craft impactful presentations. Join us for our conversation with Joey Coleman.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Joey. It's great to have you on. Been looking forward to this one for quite a while. We've had it in the works, and excited. I've been following your content and your work and your books, etc., for quite a long time. So excited to get into our conversation. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Julian. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks to everybody who's kind enough to be listening in or watching along. Super excited for our conversation today as well.
Awesome. Well, I know you've had extensive experience in both the customer experience, the employee experience as well. You've written a few books on it, decades of experience. But for those that may not be familiar with you as much, like, give us a bit of a compressed short background of your career to date.
Yeah, so I've had a really eclectic career. I studied government and international relations at university. I went straight away to law school after that, where I studied international law, criminal defense, and national security law. I worked at the United States Secret Service. I worked for the CIA. I worked in the White House. I did business consulting. I taught at the postgraduate level. I was a criminal defense lawyer. I ran an ad agency. And some people hear all these jobs, Julian, and they're like, Joey, can't you keep a job? What's going on? What have you been doing? And the reality is, in each of these jobs, the way you succeeded was by having a keen understanding of the human condition. Why do humans do the things they do? And what can we do to convince, persuade, encourage them to do the things we'd like them to do? And so for the last 20 years, I've taught organizations around the world how to keep their customers and how to keep their employees. So many organizations work night and day to acquire new customers, to recruit new employees. But when it comes to thinking about onboarding them and keeping them engaged and keeping them retained over the long term, it doesn't seem like that's as big of a priority. And that can be the death knell for any organization.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm very passionate about it, as you are as well, as to both the customer experience and the employee experience as well. But especially around the customer experience, I think there's so much opportunity for businesses these days where, not only to improve it, which there's significant opportunity there, but there's so many tools and technologies available these days where, businesses can set themselves apart as a brand and really create enterprise value. I feel like where they are building something that makes them completely different to, maybe do something that industry hasn't ever seen before, or even, bring together different technologies, etc. But without getting into that too quickly, I want to just, what do you think is the key components of what makes up a great customer experience to you? Like, what do you need to have? What are the key components?
I think there's a couple of key pieces to the customer experience. I mean, customers need to feel like they're not a number. They need to feel like they matter individually. And, it's fun. I'll talk to organizations in every industry you could imagine about this. And they say, oh, no, Joey, we treat our customers as individuals. And I'll say, great. Do your customers have an account number or a customer number? And they're like, well, yeah. And I said, and when do you assign that to them? Oh, mate, that's the first thing we do right away. And I'm like, so the first thing you do is start treating them like a number.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, that's not what. Yeah. And here's the thing, I can appreciate that we need to have numbers and account numbers to manage our relationships with our customers internally to make sure we're talking about the right one. But the reason I kind of make that crack is that it acknowledges the fact that in so many organizations, as soon as somebody becomes a customer, we quit caring about them individually and we start to try to put them into our system or our process or our flow of how we treat every customer. And I'm not saying that you should treat every customer completely customizable, is completely unique and everything specifically built out for them. But what I am saying is a customer should feel like that.
Yeah.
So there's how we operate, and then there's how we make our customers feel. And I'm all in favor of systemization, of automation, of building out, processes and using technologies to create the kind of customer experiences you want to create. But when we focus on the benefit to the organization over the benefit to the individual customer, we kind of lose track of what's important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more as well. And I'm on the same mindset. I'm all for the digitizing of the customer experience. I'm all for using these to the organization's advantage. But if you fail to keep the customer in mind and do the research properly, it will fail. The initiative will fail. Like you're going, oh, we're going to implement this, or we're going to do this, or we've got this revolutionary new platform, or all of this stuff. And in fact, they haven't done any research with customers. They haven't actually spoken to them. They've sent out a survey that had one question that was just as generic as it could possibly be, right? These kind of things where it's like, no, have you actually done the research?
And are you actually listening, right?
Yeah,
Like you mentioned
100%.
sending out a survey. All too often organizations send out surveys, but they never look at the answers. They never look at the data. They never respond to the people who filled out the survey and say, oh, Julian, thanks for filling out the survey. By the way, in question 5, you noted that your favorite thing about us is the fact that we're open 24 hours a day. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. We're going to make sure our evening shift workers know that because they're there every night so that we can be available to you morning, noon, and
Yeah.
night. And those type of things that make someone say, wow, I shared my perspective. It was heard. Well, now I might be willing to share my perspective on something that I didn't mention in the first survey that is really the thing I'm hoping you change or you enhance or you make better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Absolutely. And that was what I was going to say is essentially like I wrote a LinkedIn post about this the other day, was around the experience. Like people want experiences, not digital customer experiences, or they want like experiences, not technology or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. They just want like, how do you take problems away from me, or how do you make my life easier? And it sounds cliche, right? Because everyone says it or everything, but that's the facts. But most people don't focus on that. Most businesses aren't focusing on, they aren't looking at things where it's like, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? So what do you, and this is probably hard, but I guess what is one of the most common things you see in businesses? I know through some of your work and stuff that you mentioned, one of them is the fact that businesses just don't necessarily want to admit that they necessarily have a problem or that there are problems.
That's very true. Yeah. I mean, so many businesses are spending a lot of time, effort, and money paying attention to their new customer acquisition rates. If I were to go to the typical business leader and say, in 2024, how much money did you spend on marketing? They can probably answer that question to, pretty close. Oh, we spent this percentage or this many dollars or this many euros or whatever it may be. But if I were to ask them, how much money did you spend keeping your customers?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's different. Or, oh, that's not my department. That's not my, approach. And what's fascinating to me is almost every business on the planet knows that keeping their customers is necessary for long-term success, growth, and achievement. And yet very few businesses have a plan or a structure for how they want to go about doing that. When we think about the experience that we're creating for our customers, all too often it's the very basic things that we're falling apart on. Customers don't know how to use our product or service. And we say, oh, but Joey, we have a 400-page manual. No one wants to read a 400-page manual. I want to read a 1-page quick start guide, if that. One of the things that's brilliant about Apple products is you can take an iPad out of the box and hand it to a 2-year-old, and they will be able to navigate the technology.
Yeah.
You can take an update to an app for a bank, hand it to someone who's been a banking customer for 20 years, and they're like, Where's my account? I don't even see where my account is. And then they say, oh, there's my account. Now, how do I check my balance? How do I, make an online payment? How do I make a transfer? How do I see if a check is cleared? Whatever it may be. And they're completely lost. And that's not because the customer lacks intelligence. It's because so many of our products and so many of our services are designed to serve the organization, not to serve the customer.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, honestly. Like I literally, and that's where we work and where our kind of role comes in is helping businesses more on the tech side and the strategy side of, okay, how can we, I guess, achieve two things at once, which one of them is obviously automating and bringing in the tech to help you become more efficient, basically enable you to scale quicker and build your enterprise value. Like one of our big pushes is, okay, you want to do that for the organization side, but you cannot do that without focusing on the customer, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you do that without focusing on the customer, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like you can go and build this brand new app that something like similar to what you're talking about, or this new portal, or this new integration, new system, or whatever it is, right? But if it's your idea and it's we want to do this and we want to do that, and you heard that some other company was doing it and this person was doing it and whatever else, but it doesn't come back to what your customers have asked for, what they're wanting, what they're looking for, and everything else, you're going to release it and be extremely disappointed. Right? And
Absolutely. Well, and two thoughts on that, if I may, Julian. Number one, the fastest way to grow and scale your business is to keep your customers.
Yeah.
See, we spend so much time thinking about how do I get more customers? Well, if we're bringing customers in the front door and they're running out the back door just as quickly, we have to bring even more customers in tomorrow to make up for the ones we lost, as well as continue our growth. So while I certainly appreciate growth and scaling, if you're doing that without retention, you're fighting a losing battle. You're filling a bucket that has holes that the water is pouring out of it as quickly as you're pouring water into the top of the bucket. The other thing I'll say from a technology point of view, and this is said with respect, and based on my understanding of your work, this aligns with your value as well. No customer on the planet woke up this morning and said, oh, I need another app.
Yeah.
No customer in the world woke up and said, I wish I had a customer portal. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for make it easier, make it more intuitive, make it faster, make it more understandable, make it so that I actually understand what is happening. Basic things like communication, basic things like ease of use, basic things like amount of time it takes me to go from logging in to achieving my goal. We mentioned banks. One of the things that I thought was brilliant that banks now around the world have done is when you go to the ATM, and I realize some of the people watching and listening are like, ATM, what is that? What do you mean when you go to the ATM? But just indulge me for a second. If you haven't been to an ATM recently, when you go to an ATM, the first thing that happens when you put in your card on the screen at most banks where you type in your PIN number is they have withdrawal amounts because they know you're probably coming to the ATM to get cash. That's the number one reason people go to the ATM. So they put it on the same screen that you're logging into to say, oh, after you enter your PIN, tell us how much money you want, and we'll just start the process right away. There are so many of our customers that come to our portals, that come to our apps, that come to our websites with a singular goal. Why not put that thing that the majority of people come from right on the front page?
Yeah.
A lot of people are coming to find your phone number. Why isn't that very easy and obvious on your front page? A lot of people are coming to find your email address or your hours. These are basic things. Now, I recognize this isn't as forgive me, as what is your digital strategy? But if your digital strategy isn't let's give the customer the top things they're looking for right away on our website, on our app, on our portal, why are we wasting their time?
100. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with you. Absolutely. And that's why I come back to that earlier thing about the experience is that if you make it harder, they're not going to use it, right? Like that's the point. Like, what are you doing to take the problems away, or just make it easier, quicker? And again, it's not about being cliche, but the fact that if we've got a portal, again, people build these apps or portals, these other things. Even big companies, not just even medium enterprises or small enterprises, like these big companies are doing this with a complete lack of understanding of the customer experience, releasing things where it's like you have sat around a boardroom table, you have come up with all of these ideas, no research has been done, nothing's been tested or spoken to with actual customers, field testing, that kind of thing, where you go, okay, well, if we we wouldn't have had these issues, right? We would have known that we need to focus on this. And absolutely, I totally agree with you. Coming back to the point about the scale, absolutely agree with you on that as well, where it's not about, if you're just like basically a leaky bucket, then there's 0 point in that, because you're going to have more issues than you're going to have issues with everyone, not just your existing customers and everything. And
Absolutely.
it's like, I guess my point and what we're trying to focus on is, how do you, if you focus on the customer, your current customers will be taken care of and your future ones will be. It's a snowball effect, right? Like if you create that level of experience, it's just, okay, everyone's happy. Now on that, I want to probably not change topic completely, but I don't want to get your thoughts on this specifically, probably not necessarily the run of the mill question you get, but like, where do you draw the line of identifying the problem customers, the customers that you shouldn't be working with? And I know this from ourselves, right? Because not everyone's a good fit. And I know as we've grown and kind of scaled and changed ourselves and identified our niche and our messaging, all that kind of thing, who we work with, but we've identified we're probably not the right fit for certain people, which in turn has meant that because of our processes and systems and how we're set up, we haven't given, the facts are, we haven't given certain customers that we would say, well, okay, in hindsight, they weren't our good, our right customer. We probably should have never taken them on, because it was a kind of a lose-lose for both of us.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. My first book was called Never Lose a Customer Again. And one of the things I often try to remind people, not only with the title, but with my conversations with them, is the book isn't titled Keep Every Customer.
Yeah.
Right? The book is titled Never Lose a Customer Again. The whole idea is, I want you to keep the ones you want to keep, but every year you should be looking at your customer base and saying, who is in our customer base that really shouldn't be here? Who are the customers that either we have outgrown or they've outgrown us or weren't the right fit from the first place? Or maybe it's the case that our energies in the beginning with our business were focused on one thing, and now our energies are moving in a different direction. When I was running my ad agency, one of the things we did is build websites. But fairly quickly into it, I'd say over the course of, 6 or 7 years, I ran the agency for 20 years, I realized that I didn't want to continue to invest in understanding every nuance of the technology going forward. I was more excited about the strategy. I was more excited about the experience than the coding. And so what I did is I partnered with a web development firm to handle all of that was very committed to doing it. And I would refer them clients and we would work on projects together and that type of thing. I think it's important to get clear on not only who you are and what you like doing and what you want to do and what you're really good at, but also to be just as clear about what you don't like doing. And so one of the exercises I do in my business every year is at the end of the year, I list out all of my clients and I list out what I did for them in a granular way. Oh, I gave this company a speech. Oh, and by the way, in that speech, we developed a custom workbook for their audience. Oh, and then we did a follow-up call. And I break down all the different types of activities we did. And then I go through and I rank those things based on my enjoyment level of doing those things, the team's enjoyment level of doing those things, the value that it brought to the client, the value that it brought to our business, how it led to revenue, how it led to cost, how it took us in a direction we wanted to go, how it took us away from directions we wanted to go, the amount of energy we expended. This level of analysis allows you to really see, what type of business am I running? And is this the kind of business I want to be running or I want to be working in? I think all too often, many folks wake up one day and they're like, oh, I can't stand my job. I can't stand my business. This is not what I want to do. Well, it grew that way because you allowed it to grow that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but once you realize that it is something that you're not interested in doing anymore, what's wrong is continuing to do it. I don't judge how you got here, but if you stay here going forward and you're miserable, you don't like it, you're frustrated by the customer. What are we doing? Years ago, I
Yeah.
was working with a company that had a client. I came in to do some consulting. And I could tell at the beginning of the workshop, there were about 20 people in the room. I could tell there was a tension in the room. I wasn't exactly sure what the tension was, but we were there to talk about customer experience. And we started talking about customers. And I kept hearing this one customer's name, and it was always spoken of disparagingly, right? It was always like, oh, and then we had to deal with Sally and blah, 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 and Sally this and Sally that. And by the way, I've changed the name to protect
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
guilty here, right? And so it just kept building and building and building. And finally, and I kept noticing the CEO kept defending the relationship with Sally. I thought, well, that's interesting. One of the rules I have whenever I consult with a company is that if I feel that the CEO's presence in the room is impacting the honesty of the answers, I will ask the CEO to leave. And I tell them that before we sign the contract. So the CEO looks at me and I'm like, why don't you head out to your office for a while? I'm going to do a little exercise here with the team and then I'll come back and get you. And he's like, okay. He's not super excited about this, but nonetheless, he leaves. And I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. I want everybody to take a little sheet of paper and I want you to write the name of our worst customer. Across all products, across all services, I want you just to write the name of the worst customer, their individual name, their company name, whatever it is. And I want you to put them all in this hat. We had a hat everybody put their name in. Then I took this menu. There's now 19 people in the room. I come up to the front of the room and I start pulling the names out of the hat and reading them out loud. Sally, 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 Fred, Sally, Sally, Sally. Literally 17 of the 19 people in the room said the same customer. I said, all right, let's talk about some of the things that are bad. Oh, she's abusive to our team members. Oh, she says she wants it to be red. And then the day after says she wants it to be blue. And then the day after that goes back to saying, no, just kidding. I want it to be red. She's always complaining. It's never enough. Every time we send an invoice, she's delayed on paying the invoice. And then when they does pay the invoice, they want to only pay 70% of the invoice, not 100%. Like every department was having problems with Sally.
Yeah.
So I brought the CEO back in the room and I said, here's the deal. We've got a problem with Sally. And the CEO's like, well, I know. And I said, but here's what I'd like to do as our challenge. Sally, we'll use a baseball analogy, gets 3 more strikes. It's going to be as she's coming up to the plate for the first time. She gets 3 strikes. 3 times where the team, she does something that is offensive, that is wrong, that is just problematic. She gets 3 strikes. And on the 3rd strike, CEO, you fire her. And the CEO said, her business makes up 35% of our revenue. I said, I appreciate that, but it's causing 99% of your problems.
Yeah.
CEO says, I don't really like this, but okay, I'm willing to do it. The team is elated. They're thrilled. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the CEO. He's like, Joey, Sally had her 3rd strike today. 2 weeks, in 2 weeks. And I was like, you know what needs to happen? He's like, Joey, I want to fire her, but it's 35% of our revenue. If we don't fill that back in the next few months, I'm going to have to start laying people off and firing team members. We won't have the revenue to keep operating. I said, do you trust your people? He said, yes. I said, you got to trust your people and live up to your word and do the thing you said. So he fires Sally. 3 days later, Julian, the head of sales and one of the junior salespeople come into his office and they say, hey, we so appreciate you firing Sally. We know that was going to cost us 35% of our revenue. We've gone out and closed some new accounts to make up the difference. And not only did they make up the difference, they increased revenue by 10%. They made the 35% and increased by 10% in 2 weeks because they felt motivated that they didn't have to deal with a problematic customer anymore. I'm not saying you should fire your Sally, although it's probably worth considering. What I am saying is you got to listen to your people. As much as we want you to listen to your customers, you got to listen to your team and identify who are the customers that are causing us more problem than they're worth.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. It's a great story. I couldn't agree more. I can relate to it because we've had our own exact same, literally identical situations where, even smaller clients as well, which is even easier to do at that point. When you've got bigger contracts, obviously it's harder and things like that there. But I couldn't agree where team members, as you know from my experience, they become, demotivated. They become down. They don't want it. It's not exciting. It's actually frustrating. For them to be working on those things. And I totally agree. It's very, very interesting. And I think lesson from us over the last probably 12 months really or what I've learned myself is just you have to be clear on that messaging. We have to know who we're working with, who we're not working with, and absolutely agree with what you said earlier. Is like we need to know who we're not working with, more importantly. And I know just learning this just from being younger and inexperienced, but over time you get the experience. But essentially, it's easy to be hopeful, I guess, with the customer and like trick yourself, or like you're like, oh no, that they'll turn out all right, and we'll do this, or we'll put up with this because of this. But in the end, as you say, it causes more damage. What we want to get, not be to be negative, but what we want to get to is to get the people that we are the right fit for, that are in our space, that we know we can help, we can really work with, and then we deliver this amazing experience for them. And if you find that sweet spot, sounds like a utopia, but it is possible. Then you've really got you've got the right source, I guess, a secret source of all of the the makeup there. And I guess it leads to my next point about like building a customer centric team. And I know customer centric and customer centricity it's a buzzword if there's not a better way to say it, but a lot of people say it and all this, and there's a lot of talk about it, but to me at least, there's not a lot of true customer centricity where like the way we put it internally with ourselves is one of our core values as a company is thinks like a customer, right? So that's basically our team members are ranked on that, and not only external customers, but when you're working with internal teams, it's like, okay, well, are you thinking like a customer, right? Is that where your mindset's at? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I think it is a buzzword, but what I think is even more interesting than the fact that how frequently customer centricity is thrown around in conversation is how rarely it's actually practiced. For something that has become a very common word, it is not a common action in most businesses. And this is, to be honest, Julian, where my work on customer experience and employee experience, the Venn diagram starts to overlap here. It is impossible to ask your team to deliver a remarkable customer experience to your customers, to be customer centric, if they have no idea what a remarkable experience is, if they have no idea what what it feels like to be at the center of attention.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to deliver remarkable customer experiences, we have to be delivering remarkable employee experiences. They have to understand what it is we're asking them to do. They have to understand how the little things add up to create feelings, to create emotional experiences. So for leaders that are saying, oh, I just can't get my team to focus more on the customer, my question always is, well, how much time per week are you devoted to focusing on them? Well,
Yeah.
Joey, you don't understand. I need them to focus on the customer. I was like, no, I understand the end goal. What I don't understand is why you think saying that again and again is going to produce the result when you're not spending any time putting the team member or the employee in the center of your focus or your spotlight or your activity. We want our team members to know the customer's spouse's name and their pet's name and their kid's name and what their favorite hobby is and what their favorite movie is and all these things so that we can personalize the interactions with them. But when I
Yeah.
ask a leader, tell me about your direct report's spouse's name, their kid's name, their pet's name, where they like to go on vacation, their favorite movie. They're like, I don't know. See, most businesses have a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, but they don't have an ERM, an employee relationship management tool.
Yeah.
And this is something that is very obvious once you realize that there's a gap, and yet requires intention and attention to make a shift, to make that focus change, to really say, what is it that is most important to my people outside of their work life? I think the employers of the future, the top employer of choice in every industry over the next 20 years and beyond is going to be the company that cares as much about what happens in their employees' lives between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. as they do about what happens between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And I don't mean getting intrusive into their personal life, but what I mean is acknowledging that the humans who work with us are humans to other humans as well. They
Yeah.
have lives
Yeah.
outside of work. And what are we doing to be conscious of that and to create experiences for them that transcend both their work and their personal life?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think just bring it back outside of even the employee experience, but just back to the customer experience, everyone we're dealing with is human. If there's a team member on our team, they're a human. If there's a customer, they're a human. And this is where the whole B2C, B2B thing, I think it's just rubbish. Like you're dealing with a human. Now it's like, okay, yes,
Absolutely.
things might be more complex and there might be things, but that doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, your job is how do we change it and work it out so it's easy. That's all it is. Like how do we make this easier? How do we take less steps out of it? It's not rocket science, right? Like as in, it's like, okay, really at the end of the day, we're boiling it down to how do we make things easier? How do we make people happier? And okay, if we do this, this, and this, then that's that's what we're going to be able to do.
Absolutely. If you find yourself saying our business is B2B or B2C, I kind of want you to hear Julian and I whispering in your ear, no, your business is H to H. It's human to human. That is your business. I respect that if you're serving direct customers or enterprise customers or in a business setting or in a personal setting, that there's some nuance. Sure, I get it. But let's get the H to H right first. And then if that is running beautifully, we can spend a little time on the B2B or the B2C aspect. But we don't even get to those conversations until we get the human to human part right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the irony of it is I've sat across tables from executives that are running businesses that are 10 million plus to kind of 500 million, 1 billion, right? And the interesting thing is the people that understand that, right, are the people that are growth oriented and say, okay, we just want to constantly, like, it's like continuous improvement, like constantly, like we're not satisfied with where we're at. I know we can do better, and I know if we tweak this, if we do this, it's not like where people I feel go wrong is just like it's like a binary thing of like, oh, we're going to do this one thing and it's going to make us amazing, or this amazing experience, or we'll do this one thing. It's like, no, it's a constant culture. It's a constant process. Like, okay, so for example, we have worked with a lot of businesses that are more traditional industries, but they're decent sized businesses. They're pretty big businesses, but they're still today, the only way you can order is by email or phone, right? Like that's basically and it's like, okay, they serve what they call a B2B environment mostly, right? That's where they work with other businesses. But it's like, okay, I heard you complaining 10 minutes ago about your banking app. We'll just use the example that we previously, right? You were complaining, you were going off about it, saying, this and that and everything else. I said, don't you think the same thing applies, right, to exactly what your customers, even though they may not have explicitly told you, and they say, oh yeah, we don't do this, we don't care about this, we don't care about that. How much have you actually sat down with them, and how much have you done the research, and how much have you put yourselves in their shoes genuinely, not just for 5 seconds, and gone, well, if that was me, then I wouldn't be happy with that. And then the other thing I challenge people to focus on is, even if it's working today, my big thing is, what about if someone came along with the same resources, the same level of product and everything else, and completely revolutionized it and made it easier than you do? What would happen then? Why aren't you doing that to yourself rather than just sitting around going, oh yeah, whatever, like, they're happy as it is?
Right, like Netflix did to video stores and CDs and DVD stores, or like Spotify did to CDs, or like Uber did to taxis, right? These disruptions are coming. And I think one of the interesting things, Julian, is so many businesses, if you talk to them, can tell you what the competition is doing. I meet with companies all the time and I say, tell me about your biggest competitors. And they say, oh, well, we create this kind of widget and there's these 3 other companies in the industry that create a widget, but our widget is better than their widget. And they get really hyper-focused on their specific product, their specific service. Your competition is Netflix. Your competition is Disney Plus. Your competition is Amazon. Your competition is Temu. These are the companies that are making it easy to do business with them, that your customers are comparing you to. They may not ever tell you that, but it is so much easier to do business with the brands I just mentioned than so many businesses that are out there, just based on the convenience factor alone.
Yeah.
One-click shopping, remembering my address, remembering my order. There's a traditional company here in the US. I say traditional, they operate in a little more of a products type space. They do shipping equipment. They're called Uline. Okay. And they send,
I know them.
bubble wrap and cardboard boxes and all of that, right? Great company, great company. I was moving and I had done a move and I had gotten some boxes and some bubble wrap from Uline. And about 3 years later, I called Uline again. Guess why? I was moving. But I didn't tell them that. I just called in. And the person answers the phone and they're using caller ID. And they say, "Oh, is this Mr. Coleman?" And Julian, I'm stunned because I'm like, "Oh, wow, it's been 3 years since I've been a customer." I'm like, yes, it is. And they said, "Is it okay if I call you Joey?" I said, "Absolutely." They said, "Great, Joey. Let me guess. Are you moving again?" Now, Julian, I started laughing at this point. I was like, "You guys are really good at your game. Yes, I am moving again." And they're like, "Oh, so exciting. Where are you moving to? Do." And they start having a little bit of a personal conversation. And then they said, "So I'm guessing you have more stuff on this move, that over the course of the last 3 years, you've acquired a few more things than you had last time you moved. Are you thinking you need the same order or do we need more?" And I said, "You know what? We probably need to increase the order by about 10%. Not proud to say that, but probably." They said, "Great. Same credit card?" I said, yeah. They said, "Now for shipping address, it's the shipping address of your new place, right? Where you live now, not where we shipped last time because you were getting ready to move. So we probably need a new delivery address, right?" I said, "Yeah, you do." And I gave him a new address. He said, "Is there anything else you need?" Julian, at this point, I'm thinking, you just made it so easy, Uline, for me to give you money. You just made it so
Yeah.
easy for me to sing your praises in podcasts years later, talking about the remarkable experience I had because I felt like I mattered. I felt like I was treated as an individual. You took what you had in your CRM to feed back the specifically relevant information for me to make my conversation convenient and personalized and playful and interactive. And the project's done. And they sent me the stuff. And guess what? It worked beautifully. And I didn't need them again until next time I move. And you can bet next time I move, I'm calling them again to get more boxes.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where a lot of this stuff is, to your point earlier, not rocket science. It's about just getting the basics right. Caring for people as individuals, using the information we have to make their lives more convenient, and having everything fall under an umbrella of what is the experience we're creating? How are you going to feel after we're done interacting?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, as I say as well. And I think a big part of this, what our main focus with what we do is, okay, how can you use tech to have those kind of things? So even if someone calls in on a channel where you've got, okay, they call in or they even WhatsApp you or whatever, they may Facebook message you, you've still got that information available. Then if they want to self-service, you allow them to self-service, right? It doesn't matter. There's no like, this is the only way you should do it. Or it's like, how do you make everything consistent? So if I want to I ring up and I don't just get a generic experience. I get literally, okay, I've got all of the information available to me as a rep and I can give that great experience. If it's midnight and I want to completely self-service and I'm just having a look around, I want to do that. I want to know exactly where everything's at. I want to be able to do everything myself. I want to be able to look at this. I want to be able to look at that. It's not one right or wrong. It's like, okay, how do we make every channel? And it's not about having every channel in the world, but you would know your customers have specific channels specifically that they want. And so it's like, yeah, you do that research and then you go, okay, this is how we're going to do it, right? This is what we need to do to make it, again, coming back to the age old, just make it easier, just make it faster, right? And one of the interesting things, I had a conversation with a leader in the UX space, Pavel Samsonov actually was, but it was an interesting point he raised about just a way he put it around that if like we might have an app, or he was talking specifically about like a portal or an app or something, but he's saying, you may say, oh, let's build out this great dashboard. Our customer wants this dashboard. We'll give them all this stuff. He's like, they don't even want to log in. Right. So,
Exactly.
so how do we like text them and just say, leave it to us. We've got it sorted. If there's something you need to know, we will let you know. If you don't hear from us, it's all good, right? Just relax.
Yeah, and totally, Julian. Totally. And I think you had asked earlier what some of the things that organizations don't get right. One of the most basic things that so many organizations fail on is just frequency of communication. Why is it that the marketing department wants to email me every day, but once I become a customer, I never hear from you? Why is it that when you're courting me, when you're pitching me, when you're selling me, I'm getting text messages, I'm getting emails, I'm getting custom little gifts, I'm getting all this stuff, but once I actually become a customer, it's, well, you can solve that on the portal. You can
Yeah,
log in and figure that out yourself. It's like, well, wait a second. When you were chasing me, it was all about making my life easier. Once you have me, it's all about making your life easier. And instead, I, as the customer, have to work harder. This doesn't make sense. Most customers, I often say you can judge the value of a relationship with a customer by, if I were to call them as a third party, as an outsider, and say, all right, you're doing business with Julian. What is the last thing he did for you? What is he working on for you right now? And what is he going to do next after that thing is done? Where have you been? Where are you now? Where are you going? Every customer should be able to answer that question. Most customers can't. They have no idea what we've done for them already. They have no idea what we're working on right now. And they certainly have no idea what we're going to do next. And I get it. There's probably some people listening or watching along that are like, oh, but Joey, you don't understand. That was in our proposal. That was in our timeline and our contract and do. Folks, they didn't read it. They didn't read
yeah,
it. I
yeah,
know you put time creating it, but the team, the person, and if someone at that organization did read it, it was the person who signs their contracts, not the team you're working with now. They have no idea what you've promised. They have no idea when it's due. They have no idea when it's coming next. You cannot over communicate with your clients where you've been, where you are, where you're going. This is something I do with every one of my clients. At the end of a phone call, at the end of a Zoom, at the end of a conversation, an in-person meeting, I always recap. So before today, we had been focused on this. Now we're focused on this. Once we get this done, we're going to be focused on this next thing. And that is part of our communication cadence. So they always know where we've been, where we are, where we're going.
yeah. No, that's a great learning lesson to me, and a great framework. I agree. We've had our own challenges, and with, I would say, like any of our problems with customers, not every single one, but like the majority has come back to communication, whether that's like not communicating enough, whether that's not being on the same page right from the beginning, like misalignments, misunderstandings. But typically you can point it back to communication. Like, what could have we done better on the communication? Could they be, could have we informed them more? Could have we educated them more? And don't get me wrong, there's times where it's like, okay, it can be frustrating because like we did do everything we can, but then it's like, okay, let's not use that as a cop out. What more could have we done?
Yeah. And are we taking into consideration the way they like to be communicated with?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, well, if our communication is only available if you log into the portal and they don't want to log into the portal, we have a fundamental breakdown in communication. It's like if I was speaking to you in Mandarin and you didn't speak Mandarin, I can speak it all day long to you, and you're like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get through. There's no comprehension. And so what are we doing to make sure that we're communicating to our customers in the format that they prefer to be communicated with? And I also believe that it's useful to communicate in multiple modalities. Some people learn better by hearing. Some people learn better by seeing. Some people learn better by doing. Let's give them all three options. Let's give them a physical checklist that they can check things off. Let's make sure we auditorily tell them. Let's give them a visual roadmap where we show them where they are and where they're going. Let's deliver on all the different ways that might align best with their learning style as a way to guarantee that our communication is working effectively.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. And one of the big things I try and educate people on that we're working with and stuff is like, if you can do this successfully, the enterprise value it brings to the business is significant. Where there's two parts to this. Firstly, it's like the goodwill that you've got with the customers and the brand that you've built for your experience. then if you've built your own technology and or systems / processes, etc., that fuel that, right, that actually run that entire secret sauce, you then have competitive advantage and brand differentiation that is intellectual property, right? That is, and that is a huge driver in enterprise value. And so many businesses, as we say, aren't focused like, oh, what's our sales strategy for 2025? Or we're going to send out double the amount of flyers, right? And we're going to try and put on 2 more business development reps and try and grow. And it's like, you're a $100 million business. If you put time, you could probably get another 10 million at least out of your current customers if you did this, and this, or, even if you just focused on that, you would get more referrals or whatever it is. It's just like, and it's easy to say. I get that. It's not just as easy to implement, but I think there's so much missed opportunity in realizing that if you can create that genuinely different brand differentiation, because everyone says we're customer service first, right? We have excellent customer service. I'm not talking about that. It's like where you've talked about Uline. One of those companies for me is Wise. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So I've used them for would have to be 8 years now. They were TransferWise. Do you remember when they were TransferWise? That was their original brand. They
right. Yeah.
Right? And now their product now is way better than it was with TransferWise, but still with TransferWise, it was great. But they've been getting a lot of hate recently on LinkedIn. I'm not sure why, because I've had some issues with them, but they've always solved them like literally amazingly. And they've got, talking about, not to get off topic, but I think it relates, talking about support channels that you can chat to them, we can email them. But one of the most impressive things is I go in there, they know my account, and we've got multiple business accounts with them, and I've got a personal account with them as well and stuff. But basically, you go into the support page and you click, they've pre-filled your number and you click call me, and I am not kidding you, within a second your phone rings. And that is the difference, where it's like, I just know that if I have a problem, there will always be problems, right? With anyone that you
Of course. No business operates perfectly, and no business ever will. And I think so many businesses fear ever making a mistake, when the research actually shows if you make a mistake with a customer and you correct it, you will get higher customer satisfaction scores than if you never made a mistake.
Yeah.
Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying go out and intentionally make mistakes to then fix the problems, okay? That creates a different type of interaction and different type of human. But what I am saying is, if you make a mistake, that's okay, as long as you acknowledge it, apologize for it, create space for the customer to vent about it, and then work collaboratively to identify a solution going forward.
Yeah.
You do those things, and you'll be better off than you were before you even made the mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the products, like, for me, that I'm just like, I've been with them we've been approached by others, and I've explored other alternatives just out of interest for the sake of exploring and just to see it. But like, I always come back to them and go, no, as in, like, it's just so easy. Like, everything is so easy. And they've got B2B banking, or business focused banking. And they've also got personal banking. Just everything they do is just easy, right? It's just as simple as, there's nothing, and there's nothing that's difficult about it, and or at least for me anyway, no kind of issues that I've had. And if I want to talk to someone, I can talk to someone. If I don't, which again, for me, my kind of generation, without being cliche as well, but like digital natives, I typically myself, I'll self-service over talking, or that's just naturally what I do. But doesn't mean everyone does that, but essentially they've got these options available, and it's just insane. And that's where I think, like, the future of where this is going, customer expectations are not declining.
No, they're only increasing, and they're only going to increase from here. Like, we have never in the future will the customer expectation be lower.
Yeah. And
it will always be higher than it is right today. They will want it faster. They will want it more convenient. They will want it more anticipatory. They will want it more experiential. It's only going up from here. So if you don't start to really invest in learning these concepts and living these concepts and recruiting and training your people to live and learn these concepts, you're falling further and further behind every year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess talking about that specifically, like where do you see the future of CS going? And it's hard. It's a very broad topic, but with AI and that kind of thing coming into play now, again, there's a lot of talk around that, and I would say a buzzword and stuff. But there is going to be impacts, right? There is going to be, especially in more of the traditional industries. I'll say, like, there's people that don't even, again. So let's go back to the example of where you've got an email and phone call just to place an order, and you've got no visibility, no self-service capability whatsoever, right? Those businesses are already, in my opinion, 10 years behind already. With things like AI coming along, and I'm not just talking about generic uses of AI, I'm talking about implementing it properly, making it actually useful, implementing it in real use cases, not just implementing it because it's a shiny object and it's cool and everyone thinks it's cool. But there are genuine use cases if it's thought about properly and it's implemented properly. So, like, to me, we're talking about the speed and the expectation. Like, the expectation's only growing from here, but they're also, in my opinion, only growing faster also. And I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that the world is evolving at an exponential pace. The challenge I have with AI is the majority of organizations that are using AI right now are using it based on shiny object syndrome. They're
Agree.
using it because I heard on the news everybody's doing AI. So what's our AI strategy? I'd love to see people focus on their human analog strategy and get that right before they get super excited about their digital AI strategy. I think the caveat I will offer that I think is interesting is anytime a new technology is adopted, we have a tendency to presume that those who don't adopt it quickly are going to fall behind and never be able to catch up. And I don't think history actually proves that out to be true. If we look at, for example, the evolution of the telephone in Europe and Australia and in the United States versus, let's say, the evolution of the telephone in Africa. So I'll as somebody who lives in the United States, I'll speak to the U.S. experience. So we've got the telephone, then everybody's got landlines, and then everybody's moving towards cell phones, and then everybody's moving towards satellite, right? So we see the stacking. In Africa, they kind of skipped over the landline part. They went right to cellular. And what's really interesting about that is while we could certainly have a discussion about cell phone penetration globally in the places in the world that it exists, in many countries in Africa, they didn't have to have the infrastructure of putting up individual telephone poles and running telephone cable that had to happen, for example, in the United States. So they were able to leap to personal use in a faster way than happened in the United States. And what's really interesting about that is there isn't the infrastructure cost of, well, we still got to keep paying to maintain the infrastructure of landlines. They just jumped straight to cellular. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. I think a lot of the companies that are pouring massive amounts of money into AI right now because they want to be first, for most of the people listening, and I say this from a place of respect, you don't need to be investing massive amounts in AI right now. Just pay attention to it. Start to look and see if there are aspects where it can make your business operate more smoothly. But you don't need to spin up a 20-person AI division right now. You
Yeah.
can kind of wait and see how things continue to evolve. Don't get me wrong. Dabble with it, play around with it, have a working knowledge of it, be thinking about it. Look and see if there are some off-the-shelf solutions that you can add on to make your employees' lives easier, to make your customers' lives easier. But I don't think I think that you must do this technology because of fear is a recipe for failure in almost every instance.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a few points I wouldn't say push back on, but there's a few things I would say in regards to it. With the jump straight to cell phones, I agree with that. The only analogy I would say is, okay, what productivity and what was missed out on by doing that in the meantime, right? What gains were missed out on that. The other point is totally agree with you on the fear thing, and around AI specifically. I couldn't agree more. Like, people, that if you're implementing it because of a shiny object, if you think it's going to revolutionize, if you don't have a strategy, all of this, yeah. And if you're a traditional manufacturer, right, and you're suddenly we're gonna go and put a team of 10 AI up, why why, like, we need to have like an actual strategy of what this is going to do for us and where we're going to use this. If your data's crap, right? If you've got a terrible structure, your other system, your fundamentals are wrong, you're not going to get any benefit out of it. So I couldn't agree more with you on that. All I'd say, in my opinion, is that there are these things that where you look at some businesses where they probably are what I feel is 10 years behind already. And it's like, well, if coming back to that example that we said earlier is like, okay, if someone come along with the same resources, or let's say more resources, a good equal level product, and then they delivered this experience that wasn't novelty, right? It actually made it easier and faster and everything else to do with you. Would that be a threat to your business? And if the answer is yes, then I think, you need, as you have said, you need to be exploring that and looking at least going, okay, where do we need to be? What do we need to be looking at? And what do we need to be doing here? And I think both of us, we're basically come back to the point is, how do we make it easier? How do we make it faster? How do we make the customers happy?
Yeah. And how do we make it more experiential? How do we take into consideration what it feels like? So often, and I say this respectfully because I know you live in live and breathe in the digital space. So much of the digital conversation these days, I'm not saying with Intuji and with you, Julian, but so much of the folks in the digital industry are about faster. Make it faster. Make it faster. If it's faster, but I don't understand it. If it's faster, but I don't like it. If it's faster, but I don't get what I want, I don't care that it's faster.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think all too often in our chase of speed and in our chase of the shiny, cool technology solution, we miss out on the fact that we're actually not giving the customer what they want. Oh, we're going to let you in real time see what your data load speeds are. I don't care what my data load speeds are. I just care, did it actually go through? I just care, did we actually get the order? Did they actually get our communication? Whether they get it in 3 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds kind of doesn't matter in 99% of industries. Now, are there certain industries where those things matter? Absolutely. But in the great majority, they don't. The bigger question is, when they received it, did they understand it? When they received it, did it make them feel good? When they received it, did it bring a smile to their face? Those things are more important than, well, how quickly did we do it?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you as well. And when I say faster, I guess my point is, how do I get to the end solution or the end state that I want to do quicker, right? And whether that's like, whatever it is, it could be as simple as, oh, my order's been placed. It's like, okay, well, it used to take me half an hour to email you. Now it takes me 2 minutes because I can just reorder it and bang. Okay, great. That's the end goal. That is the goal. How do we just make it easier and we should be taking problems away, not adding problems. We should be taking friction points away, not adding friction points.
100%. And even something as simple as having it auto presume with a little checkbox that the shipping address and the billing address are the same. And if they're different, check this box and then we'll expand and let you fill in the billing address. Something as simple as that saves each customer seconds is going to save on your back end hours or days. And yes, that's a perfect example of the small tweak doesn't have to be more. The small tweak may be less. It may be auto-identifying their last order. There's a couple of restaurants that on their food apps, it pops right up as soon as I log in. One order the same thing as last time? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Don't change it at all. Great, order placed. Same credit card, same pickup location, same delivery location, same meal, exact same specifications. Yes, make it so that I can click on it once. Now, if I'm changing the order, that's fine. I'm happily understanding that I need to go through and change it. But if we want recurring business, if we want repeat business, we should be able to say to the customer, same thing as last time? Yes. Great. Done. It shouldn't require any more than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's been a fantastic chat. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. It's
likewise,
been great.
Julian.
It's been a really good chat, so I do appreciate it. I do a finale segment with each guest where I ask 3 questions, so I'd like to get into that now.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'll do my best.
Awesome. Well, here we go. So the first one is, what's one thing you believe businesses are not paying enough attention to right now that will be critical in the next 5 years?
The human to human. In all of this discussion about AI and about technology and about speed, we're leaving out the conversation about how do the humans we interact with, whether those are our customers or our employees, feel about the interactions with us. So don't forget the human while you're chasing the technological.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And if you focus on the human and or customer, you will get the tech bit right. That's the most important thing. The second one is, what legacy do you want to leave in your industry? How do you hope your work will influence or shape the future?
Oh, well, see, I believe that the bar for customer experience and employee experience is lying on the ground. I believe that the typical customers have not good experiences with the brands they do with. The typical employee doesn't like the interactions they have in the workplace. And so my goal, my legacy, hopefully, is just to raise the bar, to raise the expectation for what a remarkable customer experience is, to raise the experience that employees are having with their employers. You know, we can do better. The work is never done. And I actually find it incredibly exciting to think about, how can I make my business better tomorrow than it was today? How can I make it better for my customers? How can I make it better for my team members? How can I make it better for the companies I partner with, my suppliers? All these aspects of, there's always room to improve, and there's always the opportunity to say, can I make it more enjoyable to be in relationship with me?
Very good. Very good. And the final one is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self at the start of your career?
Oh, the advice I would give, so I'm 51 now, just to give some context. So I've been at this for a minute or two. What I would say to my younger self is, your career is so much longer than you think it is. There's so many young people, and I love them dearly. I've got a lot of young people who work for me. I've got a lot of young people that I know in my personal and professional life. And I was like this too. So I'm not saying this from a place of judgment, but you come out of uni, or you come into the workforce, or you come into, this experience of, oh, I'm going to start working. And you believe you have to have it all figured out. And you believe you've got to be succeeding every minute of every day. And you believe you've got to be hitting every promotion on schedule or ahead of schedule, or else you're failing. And that's not true. What's true is, are you learning? Do you know more at the end of this year than you knew at the end of last year? And I don't just mean more about your brand or about the business or about the technology. Do you know more about yourself? Do you know more about the other people you interact with? I'm a big fan that the commitment to being a lifelong learner is probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. Early on in my career, I thought, you know what? You shouldn't stop reading books just because you've left school and they're not being assigned anymore. You
Yeah.
shouldn't stop doing homework just because there isn't a teacher grading it. You shouldn't stop going to seminars because there isn't a professor that's taking an attendance anymore, right? You should continue to push your knowledge, to push your growth, and not only in the thing. I would encourage myself, and I think I've done a good job of this, but I do have to remind myself of it regularly, is not to narrow the focus. The more you get into something, the more you focus and drill down, and that's great. But as the great book Range talks about, like, expand your knowledge. Not only, don't just, hone in on one thing. One of my favorite things to do is go to a bookstore or a magazine store, and to go through and pull 10 magazines off the shelf that I've never read before. And then to
Yeah.
just sit down and look through the magazines, just to spark my brain to say, there are entire worlds that I have no understanding of. I want my brain to constantly be thinking, how can I make connections? How can I learn? So I would say, don't rush it. Recognize that your career is long, and enjoy the journey of learning that happens with the career, instead of just being focused on, how can I get the next promotion? How can I get the next pay raise? How can I get the next title bump?
No, I couldn't agree more with that, and I'm pumped that you share that. One of my big things is, uh, I was guided to as well in my I suppose early career, but I mean schooling more importantly, was learning how to learn. And I'm a firm believer, if you are committed to being a continuous learner, you'll never be short of opportunities. Never. Um, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's some other good advice I've been giving you. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So if you don't know something, it's you fear it, you're scared of it, but you got to learn somehow, right? You got to do it. And
Absolutely.
if you're not committed to continuing to learn, then imagine yourself in 30 or 40 years, right? You're just going to be the same stale person because you're not going to learn anything. You're going to have nothing new. It's going to be all old. So I think that's great advice, and I would second it. So I've still got a lot to learn. I've got a lot to take in and to grow, and that's why I have these conversations to learn from people like yourself. So I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Julian. And thanks so much to everybody who was kind enough to watch along or listen in. I too enjoyed the conversation, and I wish people the very best as they go out and try to create those kind of remarkable experiences that'll keep your customers coming back for more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to anyone listening, you can check out our other episodes of Pulse on YouTube. We've got a lot of great content, a lot of good guests. So you can check that out. Subscribe, hit the notification bell there, as we've also got a lot of other great content on our website, intuji.com, our learning center there as well. So thanks again for coming on, Joey. Appreciate it. And no doubt we'll keep in touch, and we'll maybe do this again sometime. Thank you.